Drama. Space Coconut.
Today's Space Coconut episode is brought to you by context, the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. Okay, let's talk about True Talent and this whole viability stuff that's going on between him and a whole lot of people. Over the past couple of weeks, True Talent has been playing with the Ghost and a build that utilizes his stealth to track survivors when they're injured. There's a lot that goes into it. You should look up his videos if you haven't, if you want to understand the core of the build that he's messing with. I personally don't. I personally think that anti-gen builds are stronger than anti-healing builds, but that's just me. The main issue started coming about when he started applying that same technique to the Wraith. For the longest time, the Wraith was called a weaker killer by many people, and to an extent that is very, very true. Depending on who you go against, the Wraith is not the best choice of killer to deal with survivors. So when True Talent started saying that Wraith was top 4 under Ghost, a lot of people were like,
Oh god, okay. Alright.
So with people insulting True Talent and True Talent trying to defend himself against people by, using words and things, I think the most important part of this conversation hasn't even been had yet. And I think while I'm not the person to have or make these people have this conversation, maybe they'll see this and they'll actually start. The most important thing that True Talent can do right now, actually, we're backing up a little bit. The most important thing that this conversation about killer viability between the Wraith and the Ghost and all of that, the most important thing we need to decide and determine, well, there are a few things. One, what exactly is the definition of viability? Everybody has a different, definition of viability. It means something different to, all of the players of Dead by Daylight. There are some people who say that viability means being able to do well against survivors. Viability means being able to accomplish certain tasks, like, and I'm using finger quotes here, have gen pressure on, during a match. Viability could mean doing well against sweaty survive with friends groups. Viability could mean having a 3K at least. It could mean having a double pip. It could mean having a 4K. It could mean having a 4K within 5 minutes. It could mean any number of things. Nobody has said or decided or agreed upon what viability means. And that's the number one thing that we should be figuring out here. If you're going to make a call and saying this killer is viable, you should define what viability means to you. This way people understand what you mean when you say this killer is viable. Another condition that we need to decide and figure out is a killer less viable if they're only viable with their best add-ons? And honestly, I think that actually comes down to a matter of opinion. Not to mention the fact we still don't know what viability means in this case. So let's figure that out first. And True Talent plays this game every single day for like 5 to 8 hours. I don't know how long the guy streams. He plays this game every single day for that long. And that's called practice. And with that amount of practice, you can get good with pretty much any killer. I don't want to go back and look at his videos, but there's something he says that's very important to this conversation, and that's the fact that he has over 3,000 hours in this game. Does viability mean being able to pick up a killer and to do well with that killer? That if you pick up this killer, you're going to do well. Now, people are going to argue and say the spirit was that way. Oh, that's fine, you can have that argument. But the question remains, when does an individual player's skill become more of a factor than the killer's own, and I'm using finger quotes again, viability. For the longest time, people said the hag was bad, and she was, for the most part. I just spent enough time with her to figure out how to use her, even though she was bad, and that made her viable. Thanks to the past couple of buffs, she got better, and more people started picking her up. Well, I say that, but apparently she's the least picked killer, so yeah, people like running in circles, I guess. Once a player has enough practice with an individual killer, that killer could possibly become viable at any rank because that player understands the tiny nuances of an individual killer to be able to do extraordinarily well with them. There are a lot of people who say Legion is bad. Even the Legion mains are going to tell you that he's bad. But I guarantee there's somebody out there who made a single post, doesn't know the forums exist. Maybe he just plays Legion. Maybe he's playing Legion right now, and he is a freaking amazing Legion that would make any of us look incompetent playing any of our best killers. There might be somebody like that out there. The point is, we don't know. Before Freddy got his nerf, I was starting to seriously look into him and try and figure out how to work him. And before his change, I discovered that there were certain things that I was doing that if I changed, Freddy became very, very dangerous, even when he was bad. We need to have a conversation about what viability means before you say a killer is viable. In order to test, this is like True Talent did a test of 16 matches, and in that he played with the Wraith and he used add-ons and he did whatever. He used his main build, the best build, which is also why I use a single build with Hag. I have a certain way of playing, and my build complements that. That's why you don't see me change it very often. He plays a certain way, and what he failed to mention, and what differs from player to player, is what constitutes a win. What is winning to True Talent? What are the rules for the matches that he put into place? Personally, on a side note, I'd really like to see what he does with Hag if he was going to play 16 matches in a row with Hag, and it'd be interesting to see what he discovers about her and then see what he does with it. Another thing that people seem to be doing is taking it personally. They say, oh, I don't like True Talent, I don't like his attitude, I don't like how he says this, I don't like how he claims this, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? He's just a mouth. So am I. We just say things. We open our mouth, we say, we have opinions. But A, they're opinions, so don't get butthurt. Don't take it personally. Don't try to make personal attacks just because you disagree with an opinion, that says more about you than it does him. Knock it off. Keep it separate. And pay attention to what he's saying, and try and understand where he's coming from with that so you can understand what he's saying. And if you disagree, look at how he's looking at things to come to a conclusion, see what's wrong with that, and then have that conversation. It's simple. When we were all having that conversation about Spirit and 1v1 and 4v1, and Scott Junn comes in and picks apart True Talent's video about, I don't know, that whole conversation, I don't know who noticed, but certainly not the people, not Scott himself and the people in his camp, didn't realize that Scott stopped talking about True Talent's point. He wasn't paying attention to what True Talent was saying, and then Scott tried to talk about a point that True Talent never even made, taking other aspects of the point he did make out of context, putting words, taking the situation differently, and he stopped paying attention to what True Talent was actually saying, and then made an entire video about how True Talent was wrong when he never actually directly addressed what True Talent said, because Scott stopped looking at what True Talent said, and in Scott's own mind created a whole different scenario that wasn't what True Talent was talking about. Pay attention and look at what somebody's saying, listen to what they're saying, and then address what they're saying. If you change what you think somebody else has said and you're trying to make an argument, you're making yourself look like an idiot. Anyway, now I don't mind True Talent. Some of the things he does get on my nerves, especially when he gives advice about Hag. But I mean, who cares? Again, the most important thing that people need to look at, and that True Talent should probably address, is the context of what he was saying. Now, I'm sure that he's explained it several times, and I have the general gist of it, but like I said, I'm not going to go back and look at clips, and I'm not going to try and extrapolate on it. I'm only going by what I remember, and he had an experiment that proved to him his point, and he shared that opinion. He shared the outcome of his experiment with everybody else. You don't have to take it as gospel. The guy has 3,000 hours. Of course he's going to do well with a killer. If you want to prove him wrong, if you think he's wrong and you want to prove him wrong, discover, find out what the context is, what his rules were, and see if you can't replicate it. Scott Jund, is it Scott? No, I don't know who did it. People in general keep saying that, he's wrong, that Wraith is a bad killer. Well, then use the builds. Give it a shot. Play Wraith a while and see what you can do with it. Don't just do like 1 or 2 matches and just, decide, oh, he's bad. Play like 20 matches, 25 matches. They don't have to be in a row. Just get good with Wraith, right? Learn some ins and outs. Watch his videos and see what he did and understand the playstyle and see if you can replicate what True Talent did. Depending on your skill level, you may or may not be able to at all. But if you do better than you normally do or would normally do with Wraith, there might be some merit to what he's saying. Have your own little experiment and discover it for yourself. If you disagree and you don't even want to try to do well with Wraith, you just want to say that he's bad, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're making yourself look like a fool at the same time. I've said it before in a previous video. In the end, I always say, play who you want and play them to perfection. Every killer is viable if you know how to utilize that killer to their utmost potential. Of course, I failed to mention what, viability is to me, and in all honesty, I haven't really figured that out yet. But at the very minimum, I suppose for me, a killer is viable if you can play a match and still feel like you can come back from defeat, or that the win that the survivors had when you lose was fair. That's viability. It's also why, keys and moris are BS, but that's a whole nother thing. Message to True. If you see this, talk about the context of your experiment. Talk about what constituted a win or a loss. And most importantly, talk about what viability is. Define that. This way, everybody else, who might disagree with you can have that conversation that you want. For me, I agree with you. I think Wraith is good. The trick is whether or not I can play him well. After all, I mastered the Hag, and she was garbage. Let me know if this rant kind of made sense. I didn't write a script for it. I just kind of rambled on, and I don't really have any facts that I bothered to look up. But I think it was an important conversation to have. And besides, a lot of you wanted to hear my take on it, and everybody started talking about it, so it's kind of nice to talk about something Dead by Daylight related that doesn't really have anything to do with Dead by Daylight. So it was kind of fun. If there are any other topics you want to hear about, drop them in the comment section and we'll have a chat about it. Definitely let me know what you think about this conversation, what True said, what others said. If there's something I missed, most importantly, if there's something I missed, call me out on it. I'm not afraid for some negative feedback or some, whatever the word is for being called out on my mistakes. Because I make them. I make a lot of mistakes. I think I'm going to go make some more. In the meantime, I'll see you in the fog.